Welcome back to another episode of the Voices of Boyle. This week I have the pleasure of chatting with Joe Mulleady. Joe's journey through cycling, sports and his battle with Lyme disease are just some of the topics that we'll be delving into. From his cycling passion and racing experiences to his undefeated spirit after being diagnosed with Lyme disease, Joe's story is one of resilience and determination. So saddle up and let's dive into the episode. Welcome, Joe, to the podcast. Hope you're keeping well.
Thanks very much, Carlo. It's great to be invited.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, keeping with the tradition of the podcast, Joe, maybe take us back to the beginning. You were reared in Churchview, so why don't you tell us a bit about what it was like growing up back in those days?
Well, I don't know about yourself, but fond memories I have of Churchview, and in Boyle in particular, is long, hot summers and very few rainy days that I can remember. Long evenings, playing football on the street, cycling everywhere, and
Football,
playing football on the street mainly, playing football in the GA park, down the soccer pitch, swimming in Assy, swimming to Doon Shore, cycling everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd probably remember as well from back, because we're similar age. So you'd have the street, I think it was called the street leagues. You'd have Marion Road, you'd have Churchview, Forrestview, Tarman, and there used to be fierce rivalry between those two teams. But they were a big part of my childhood memories as well. Growing up was these different, and they'd be played, I think, down on the pleasure ground. Well, I think the pleasure ground was Tarman's home venue, but then you had Churchview, I think, down at the bottom of the hill had a pitch of some sort back then. I'm not sure.
We had a pitch that was later on now that we got that pitch.
Yeah.
The field itself was pretty rough and ragged, so it was the council at one stage, I remember, levelled it out, and we got the grass was never great on it though. It was like a mire really.
Yeah.
Got goals, but we used to frequent our gates really.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, exactly.
For a game, 3-4 side, first to 20.
Yeah.
20 went on to 21, 25, 30.
Next goal wins.
Yeah. I don't know how many next goals we had.
So obviously then playing football was a big part of your childhood. Did you do anything playing football then kind of in the secondary school years? Were you involved or...
I recall playing football in first year and second year, but I think it was up until under 14s that I played in secondary school. See, I was in a age, I suppose, that kind of fell between two branches or two stools, that the cut-off period was in the middle of the year. So myself and next door neighbour Martin Mullen we were on a team that was probably a year ahead of us in school. So we were playing football with lads that we didn't really know. Well, at the time we didn't know, we wouldn't have been friendly with them, and friends of ours that we were pally with round the street in school, they were below us in a different age group. So I suppose we were kind of, I wouldn't say outsiders, but we were definitely warming the bench a lot of the times.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Martin Mullen, now when you were talking about that, was that with Boyle Celtic or was that with...
That would have been Boyle GA.
Boyle, so this is Boyle GA, this is GA, okay, right, yeah. So Martin was in your year as well?
Martin was in my year, yeah. He's 7 days younger than me.
All right, okay,
4,
yeah. And was there any other sports then that you were into, Joe, at a young age?
Football, and when we were in national school, we would have played a lot of football, Gaelic football, soccer. I did play with Boyle Celtic for a while, but it was short-lived.
Underage as well.
Underage. Yeah. Fell out of love with Boyle, with the GA then. It was around under 14s. Took a bit of a sabbatical, I suppose, or a rest period. And then I got involved with martial arts in Green Dragon with John Sweeney from Sligo.
Okay, so transitioning from football to martial arts then is a bit of a shift. So how did your time with Green Dragon?
Green Dragon, yeah.
How did that shape your kind of interest then and experience then moving on forward in life?
At the time, it was when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Gladiators, all that was on TV. I suppose I felt part of that scene and, strive to be maybe on TV at some point and be part of that as well. The competition, that kind of angle of things.
Yeah.
But met new friends, developed a sort of a relationship with a lad that was on the street with us. Myself and him were the only two that were participating in martial arts at the time. So it was a different angle, I suppose. Different. It was something different than everybody else was doing. It wasn't just the GA. It was
good. That was different back then.
new,
Yeah, because there wouldn't have been too many I can remember that was doing martial arts. And did you get any black belt, purple, blue belt?
I got as far as purple. I think was the last.
So what?
I missed out on the brown. And
so what's the kind of the color?
The grading
of
the
the
grading
colours,
at the time was from white to yellow to orange. I think red, blue, green, purple, brown, and then I think there was black. There was a few intermittent ones in between them as well.
Different shades.
But I think there was 10 grades altogether before you'd get to black belt level. And so I think it roughly took about 5 years
to get to the purple that you had.
To get to black.
Okay.
I think I missed out on the grade at one point, and I would have been a brown if I hadn't missed out on it.
Yeah.
So, John Sweeney pulled out of Boyle then at one point and was expecting us or wanted us to go training down Sligo. Of course, I didn't have that opportunity to get down or to go. It would have been too difficult getting transport. I just gave it up.
Fizzled out.
Yeah. Leaving cert, I think it all happened at around the same time. So
that would have been.
That was 97.
Right, because I was 96.
I think.
Yeah, I was 96. So you would have been. Yeah, I thought. Yeah, you were a year behind me then.
Yeah.
So after leaving cert came and went, did you went to college?
No, I took a year out of college.
Right.
I had this idea in my head. My father at the time had a motorbike, and I had this idea in my head that I was going to go working for a year, and I was going to go to college, and I was going to buy a motorbike and use that as transport.
Right.
So I took a year out and went working in Knockvicker with a company called Kermack Strings, and at Christmas time, then I got into Stewart's Mill and Boyle. So.
You stayed there for a year.
Stayed working there for, it would have been 8 months maybe, working with Danny Shanley, Tony Shanley, Pat Roddy, Jason Byrne, and the crack we had was something else. Like, worked hard, but great crack.
Yeah.
Almost decided not to go to college. I was going to stay working in Stewart's Mill, and
the allure of making a few pounds.
Yeah.
Going out, enjoying life, and then having to pack up all that. And so you did actually then go, you went to college then after?
I went to college then after that, yeah.
In Sligo, was it?
In Sligo.
Yeah.
I had initially picked construction studies. The change of mind form came out when I got the Leaving Cert results. I think it came out when I got the Leaving Cert results, and I said I'd change my mind. I'd go for civil engineering instead. So went for that, and now my Leaving Cert results just got me enough to get in, and went down and was happy out.
So you stayed in Sligo for 4 years.
Stayed in Sligo for 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, it was a 5-year degree, tough going.
Yeah.
When it started with 64 in the class, I believe. Went down. The attrition rate was about half every year.
Really?
Yeah. And I think there was 2 of us that finished. No, there was
2 out of 64.
There was 2 from the first year we went in, out of 64 that passed, got our degree in civil engineering. Now we had other students come from other colleges. You had lads that were probably repeating a year, came back, but yeah, two from what started in first year. In 1999, I believe it was.
Jeez, that's a
Or
huge
98.
number to like whittle through in 5
It is,
years.
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but as you said, 2EV graduated out
Two
of.
graduated.
There was obviously more
There
in.
was.
Okay.
I think there was 10 altogether.
Even 10 out of 64. It just shows you the.
It was a tough course. It was one of the toughest courses down there.
Right.
Very heavily maths orientated. A lot of students coming from other colleges found it very difficult. It was so strict, so stringent. There was a lot of work involved. At the time, the IT were striving for accreditation with the Engineers Ireland, so there was a lot of extra subjects. There was heavily weighted towards maths. There was additional structures involved. So there was a lot of studying. I think I recall in the final year, I think I had 26 hours a week, which would be a lot for a college course.
Oh yeah, it would have been, yeah. And when you were involved then were you involved in any organisations or sports down? Did you play any football, for example? Or
I recall going back to the college, and after a month or so finding my feet down there, I knew Green Dragon used to have their classes out at Boyle on a Wednesday night, so I decided I'll bring my gear with me and I'll head off. But then I found it was 20 minutes walk out to Boyle from where I was, so I put it off for the Wednesday night, the next Wednesday night, and the next. So I suppose the first year could have been you could say it was probably writ off towards the pub, studying in the pub, and I eventually found rugby.
Yeah, because I remember because we hadn't spoken or met in a long, long time, and I did remember hearing that you were playing rugby. So what was that like then? That was probably second or third year in college.
I think it was second year when I found rugby. Started with the college team. Met a few lads that were there, that took me under their wing. I had never played rugby before, but I found it was a place for everybody. It didn't matter what size you are, big or small. There was a position for you no matter what. Where in the Gaelic, it was. I would over the years, would have been struggling with weight issues the whole lot, and even down through the years, it would have been the butt of jokes, I suppose, in secondary school, as you would expect. And I found rugby, there was a place for me, and there was no sort of, what would you say, judgment, yes.
Okay.
As long as you could get that ball, carry that ball with you and try and get across the line and drink pints hard afterwards. There's a place for you.
Yeah. So you found an outlet there then, and were you doing any weight training or gym work?
Gym work, weight training, proteins, creatines, every sort of thing that money could spend.
Oh yeah,
you could spend on. Sure, the amount of money I'd say that was gone down the toilet, like it was, colossal. Like when you can. At the time, I didn't know what I was doing. Just thought, it was a case of try and bulk up and also try and lose weight at the same time, which isn't possible.
Oxymoron, really, yeah.
Found that out in later life. That
I think everyone though, like even I remember when I started training it was the same thing. You try and put on muscle, but yet lose weight. It's like
I think
hard.
Everybody has to go through that phase. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you don't.
And buy the protein and the creatine were the two kind of things you had to buy. Although nowadays I'd say there's a lot more stuff that's out there, different supplements that you can get. But back in our day, those were the two big ones.
Yeah, they're the main ones,
Yeah. So you played then for Sligo, the Sligo Rugby?
Through the college, I met up with, I think it was a fella called Martin Feeney. At the time I was, I suppose I was 16 stone at my heaviest, and I was playing prop forward for the IT. And my compatriot, I suppose, was Martin Feeney. He was the other side of me in the scrum. So he had changed from Ballina and he was living in Sligo. He had transferred from Ballina to Sligo. So he was encouraging me to go out playing rugby with Sligo Rugby Club. So I was looking for something to do in the in the middle of the summer as well as during the college year. So I decided I'd give it a go. I arrived down, didn't know any of the lads down there, and was welcomed in by them. Found a new home, really enjoyed it, made new friends, really was met at home, when I arrived.
And did you keep that on for long after college, or?
Yeah, I think it was about 5 years after college. I've played rugby with Sligo. Went working with contractor in Tarman-Barry. So I would have been 2-3 years. Yeah, I'd say it would have been 3-4 years with Sligo after I left college.
Right. So you mentioned there then that after you graduated with your degree in civil engineering, you went working in Tarman-Barry?
Well, I went for 3 months. I couldn't find any work at all. So I was working with Tommy Cunningham in there in Sloan's. Enjoyed that too while I was there.
Did you work in Sloan's?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it. And through working as an engineer for a summer in Strokestown on a roads job, I ended up getting another appointment through the same company the year after when I graduated. They were looking for engineers, so they rang me up and asked me was I looking for a job? So, of course I was looking for a job. I was wanting to get into the field, so I went for it and up to Strokestown. I was working for a couple of weeks on a road job, and then I was moved to Tarman-Barry where they were doing a marina project there.
Okay.
So now I found that very hard in terms of travelling down still for training.
I'd say so, yeah.
Like even when I was living in Boyle down to Sligo, like even a home game in Sligo was an away game for me.
Of course, you were constantly playing away. Yeah. Right.
And I found it very hard to socialise afterwards because I was all the time to be home, to be up for work the next morning. Yeah. So I found it very hard.
Yeah. You couldn't do that.
No.
It was just...
And I found I kind of hadn't the connection with the lads then because of that. Like, because of the social scene, I wasn't there for the social scene. I kind of wasn't. Yeah. I wasn't part of the team. Well, I wouldn't say I wasn't part of the team, but I kind of felt there was a little bit of a wedge between us.
Well, I suppose the social scene was a 50% of the whole operation. So, yeah.
And the relationships like they established were a lot. The bonds were stronger, like I suppose, compared to mine with them.
So then, obviously, I later on then in years heard, it was through Colin Byrne was telling me that, who's your cousin, that you were doing a serious amount of cycling. And how did you get into the cycling, Joe? Because you got into it in a big way. I did,
but that's me, it's a kind of an obsession. Anything that I take up new, that I get obsessed, and then all of a sudden it's hammer and tongs. I went back playing football, and I had played a bit of football with Boyle at the time as well when I was playing rugby during the off season, because you want to set yourself off on the best foot, I suppose, with the next season coming. So you want to keep your fitness up. You don't want to be starting from square one. So I was out playing a bit with the under 20s and the juniors at the time. And then I also I met up with Colette, my partner, in, I think it was 2001, I think I met her. And I was over and back to Leitrim as well with her. And we started building a house.
Okay.
And I started getting very pally through social scene, I suppose, and family events and events that was around Leitrim Village. I started getting fairly friendly with a lot of the lads in the GA team there. So I was asked again, would you come out and do a bit of training in the summer? So I said I'd give it a go. I went out. Of course, I went out with a different air of confidence about me at this stage. Like it was, I'd learned from the rugby. I'd kind of shrugged off the demons from the past, and I was ready to confront anyone. I didn't care what anyone was going to say or what, so I had a new inner strength, I suppose. I started to enjoy it. Started to develop really well. And at the time I was suffering a lot with injuries as well through rugby. And I suppose through building the house, the persuasion of Colette that, maybe you should give up that rugby because you're getting injured the whole time. You're suffering the whole time. And the house needs to be built. Aren't you as well just spend your time. The pitch is only down the road. Couldn't you just go down there, do your training, play a bit of football, get your fitness and be happy with that? So I did. I started playing football, started playing matches, but it was a totally different game. Like I had the energy, or I had the endurance behind me from the rugby and the strength, but it was different movement patterns. You know, it was turning on the feet that you wouldn't normally do in rugby, and eventually the foot didn't like what I was putting it through, and ended up getting a fractured metatarsal. So that was in a boot then for 6 weeks. I was out of action and couldn't play, and of course I was devastated with this because I was really getting on, like, you know, and I could see the development and I could see my improvement, and I wanted to keep it going. So it really set me back, but I was determined to get back. I was determined to get back playing football again. And as soon as the boot got taken off, I was back with the physio, and she was trying to do her best to try and get it get it back fit. And over a couple of weeks, she would say to me, she says, you know, you want to start doing there now. And of course, I was expecting go swimming, because everybody seems to say swimming is the best for everything. But she said, no, go cycling. And I says, all right, okay. Now, it just so happened I had bought a bike a couple of months before that, but I don't know, do you remember the cycle to work schemes that were brought out by the government?
Yeah.
So myself and a work colleague in the council there in Leitrim, we decided to avail of this, and we got on bikes because we started doing some designs for cycleways. So we said, we better cycle the same road as these cyclists as well. So we decided to get a bike. And so the bike anyways had been parked up in the garage for a couple of months at this stage. I think I went out on it 2 or 3 times, and following the physio's recommendation, I said, I better get out and start doing a bit. I was fine walking, and I was fine, you know, even doing a bit of light jogging when I was playing football. But when I went out on the bike, whatever the forces were going down through the foot, like I could feel the ache and the pain, and I thought I was getting on good at the rehabilitation was coming on, and went back playing football. I think I went back for a Junior C championship game and ended up having to come off because the pain in my foot was just unbearable. I wasn't able to run. I wasn't able to put my foot down. And at that stage, I think we were out of the Junior C championship went on without me. And as you said already, it was kind of fizzled out. And then I was cycling more. Then I started doing a few charity cycles, and met up with a few of the lads that I had been playing rugby with in Carrick and Shannon. There was a charity cycle for them, and I was keeping up with them, and I was absolutely out of me feet. Like when I finished, and they were saying, "Jesus, Joe, you're in great shape. Like you're pushing, like the mountain bike tires that you had on." And I was keeping up with these lads. So they says, "You're absolutely abusing yourself. Like, why don't you not get a racer?" Of course, I thought this. I didn't pass my teeth on it. Like, I thought, what's the difference? Like, there's not really that much difference in it. So that led anyways to, after a couple of these charity cycles, and of course my tongue hanging out the whole time trying to keep up, I says, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to get one of these racers and, try and make it a little bit easier for me. So I bought a racer, and the first cycle that was coming up was the Tour de Breffni. It was ran by Leitrim Cycling Club, and a few of us at work, we decided to go and do it. We decided to do the 100k. Of course, 60 wasn't enough for us. We decided to go the whole hog.
And what was the most?
I think it was probably about 45, 50k. Decided to go for the 60k. It was up Glengavlin climb. It was, you're talking, it was 2-3k of a climb, and we said, sure, we'll go and do it. And it was grand for the first 2 hours, 3 hours. But I remember coming back, whatever way the wind had hit me then, and we had lost the group. We were in dribs and drabs at that stage. We were kind of ones and twos, and I remember coming by Drumcairn, and there was a food stop, and I remember looking at it, and I had they had water there as well to fill your bottles, and I remember coming to a stop to fill my bottle, and I was feeling a bit feeling a bit dizzy, queasy, like, you know, a bit. I could feel the legs, like, the energy levels were gone. And so I pressed on a little bit anyways and went down and was heading for Drumshanbo. And I don't know, do you know the bridge across the Shannon there, Drumshanbo, outside of, it's called Mahana. And there's a turn for Leitrim Village, but the road went on, or the route went on into Drumshanbo to make up the 100k. It went into Drumshanbo and it went back out the Drumshanbo to Leitrim Village Road. And I was going in that road. I thought, Jesus, I'm going to cut this short now. I says, I won't be able to go the whole way. Of course, ignorance, I suppose, took over and I kept going. But I went down as far as it was started and finished at the Leitrim Gales football pitch down from us, just down from the house. So I went down anyway and I was hardly able to get off the bike. Oh, I was bonk. I didn't really realise at the time I had a bonk.
Yes, yeah.
So refuelled on what food they had there and filled up and went up and sat down, and Colette and her sister was there in the sunroom waiting for me to come in, and sat down and I could barely move.
Yeah.
I could barely move.
Because, I mean, going from your longest cycle, probably 40, 50k, to do 100, that's monumental.
It's a massive jump.
It
and
is.
Even anyone now that I have my experience of racing, and somebody was asking me advice about a cycle, and they'd say they're they're used to doing 60k. 60k is about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours, for an average enough cyclist. Then to decide, well, maybe I might do the 100. That's a big difference. And we'll go through it in a while, why that difference is. But back to when I finished the cycle, I took out of my back pocket, I had a phone with me and I had an app on it. And it was recording how accurate it was now. I don't know. It would be just going on your weight and your the length of time you were out on the cycle and the speed you were doing. It came up on it that I had burned 4,000 calories, over 4,000 calories. Now, this was coming from a fella that had a lot of difficulties over the years, trying to shed a lot of weight, and didn't really know what I was at. And I thought, Jesus, there's something here now. 4,000 calories, what you'd have to do to try and burn that running. So I says, I'm going to get into this now. So there was a fella in the village as well that he was cycling about a year before I was, and he was in the club. So it was a case of they were asking me to get involved, and then he was decided he was going racing. So I says, sure, I'll go racing as well. So of course this was my new obsession.
The compulsion kicks in.
But I can't just go in racing. Like, I need to know everything about
right.
it.
So you started reading books. And
I started reading books and how I was going to plan to get where I needed to be. I just don't go in half-arsed into things.
But that's a good thing as well, I think. A lot of people are like that.
It can be. It has its downfalls as well.
Of course, yeah.
And I've found that in the past. People have said to me, I'd love to have your willpower. I'd love to have your obsession. I'd love to be able to, just go in, and even when I was in the gym, people used to say to me, I'd love to be able to just go in and do your workout and get out, or you're here, whatever, you're dedicated to it. But the cycling in particular, or even the last couple of years, that obsession, the downside of it is that, I'm either 100% or I'm 0%.
Right.
That's the thing. It's people can float by and they can just do a bit and be happy to do a bit. But I wasn't happy with that. I was either all in or I was as well do nothing. So,
well, that's your personality.
Yeah.
That's, and that's what I was saying. A lot of people are like that. They can't, especially when they're into something and they're passionate about it, they want to learn as much as they can about that and try and do their best at that. So, that's just personality types. And had you any crashes on the bike?
Multiple crashes.
Right.
So the structure of racing in Ireland, or it's ran by Cycling Ireland, is you start off at your novice level. So novice is A4. That's where the majority of the crashes happen. Because you have everyone joining, everyone thinking they're strong, everyone that has ever got a clap on the back and says, "Jeez, you're a great man. Like, you should try racing." They're the fellas that are in A4 and maybe A3. So A4, A3, plenty of crashes. Some through probably my own fault, in terms of tiredness setting in, fatigue setting in, not paying attention. Like you're racing in a group or a bunch of 50, 60 riders, you're wheel to wheel. The wheel, in a good race, you're talking back wheel, front wheel, you're talking about an inch between both. That's the distance that you're purely to try and preserve energy, mainly to try and hide from the wind, to try and be as efficient as you can. That's the nature of the sport. And
did you said as well, you mentioned to me in the past that you raced in the Ross, is it?
The Ross.
What is that?
And the Ross, well, it was called, when I did it, was called Ross Talton. It was numerous different names before that. It was incarnations. It was on Post Ross. I recall, I think it was in 1984 on Post Ross went through Boyle.
Okay.
In latter years then, 2018 was the year I did it. And that was the last year as an international 8-day race. So
it was an 8-day race.
It was an 8-day race. It had it was a categorized race. So you got what they call UCI points for it, and it pitted, I suppose, the best amateur racers against the amateur semi-pros teams from Europe, from the UK. There's various different categories, I suppose, of professionalism in racing, and these would have been the kind of the Division 3 maybe level of professional racers that would have been racing against us amateur racers that would have been doing it on their own time, training on their own time, not getting paid, trying to pay our own way for 8 days around Ireland.
And what kind of mileage or kilometres every day on average was?
On average, you're talking 140k. Maximum days, I think, was 160. And then I think the maximum day was 180.
Now, you would have been... you were cycling a few years at this stage. That wasn't.
I was 4 or 5 years cycling at this time, or racing at that time.
Right. And so leading up to that, the Ross, what's the second? Talton?
Ross Talton, yeah.
Talton. What kind of training were you doing in preparation for being able to be on the saddle for 8 consecutive days?
I suppose there's 2 facets towards how taking on a race like the Ross. It's the number of years that you're racing prior to actually doing it, because you need to be at a certain level, or you need to have attained a certain level and raced at that level for a while before taking it on. The year prior to it then, pre-season would have started in October. So if you think the Ross was May, the middle of May, and pre-season training started in October. It's based about, a lot of the training is based about what they call periodization. So you break it into blocks, your season into blocks. You do more volume in the winter and slower paces, and then getting closer to race season, you reduce the volume, but you increase the intensity.
Okay, right. And nutritional side of things then during the race, had you a plan, like you're plant-based now, aren't you?
I'm plant-based now.
No, but you weren't back then, were you?
Not when I started racing, but I would have been dairy-free a couple of years prior to that, because I found I had an intolerance test done a couple of years when I started working with Leitrim County Council. There was a discount on testing that was provided by the council, and I had a test done and it had found out that I was intolerant to dairy. So I'd given dairy up a couple of years in advance. I had tried numerous different diets when I was racing. The basis behind any nutrition, I suppose, or to try and losing weight, is you need to burn more calories than you're bringing in. Then you'll lose weight, or you'll burn fat. Yeah. I had tried many different dietary or nutritional protocols in the 4 or 5 years that I was racing. But I had found that meat in particular didn't sit well with me, or it was there was a heaviness to it. I'd be rare I'd eat any steak. I'd given pork up as well years before that, because I found it caused inflammation. It gave me a lot of sinus problems, headaches. Steak, beef was very heavy. I found it very hard to digest. So I was limited to about chicken and fish was really all I used to eat. And I had started working with a coach, because in the latter years I had found that I was trying to cram too much into training, and that can be the downside of self-training or self-coaching, that you think you haven't you think you're not covering enough, so you think you have to try and, like, if you had 8 or 9 days in a week, you'd try and fit it all in. But I was trying to cover too much, and I ended up getting, you'd get fatigued, you'd get sick, your immune system would be under pressure the whole time. And I said I'd allow a coach to take that out of my hands, because I was reading great stuff about coaches, that you should get a coach that it takes the guesswork out. It kind of saves you from yourself, is what they say. And I was one of those people. I needed to be saved from myself, because I was destroying myself, really. So he had suggested, because he also was monitoring nutrition, or he was giving nutritional advice, and I had mentioned to him about I was finding it difficult with the beef and the chicken, or I was finding it difficult with the beef, and I had stopped eating pork, and I says I was eating more salads and raw veg and all that. And he says, do you know, have you ever tried going plant-based? Now, I do. Some people say veganism. I find it easier to say I'm vegan, just purely because people associate, oh, well, you don't eat any meat or dairy. I don't like the way that veganism kind of has a negative baggage to it. It has a negativity that it carries, that people think that you're hugging trees, that you're going around with braids in your hair, you're trying to...
Well, a lot of people get confused with plant-based and being vegan. Vegan, as we know, is a code of ethics, as opposed to being plant-based, because I'm plant-based as well, like yourself, not vegan, even though, as we said, we don't eat plants, animals, or we don't eat animal products, but we still wear leather and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's a different, but I know what you're saying, and there is a negative, I think, even though there's a big push now for the whole veganism, there's still a negative kind of association with the term vegan.
It has, yeah. It's when you say somebody's vegan, you half expect that they're going to be trying to shove something down your throat, like they're going to be trying to save you from your meat-eating life.
Yeah.
And it's easier, I find, that all the restaurants know what veganism is. Like, if you
100%,
ask for vegan options, they'll have something available for you. Where plant-based, they kind of be looking at you going, Jesus, this fella going to be eating raw broccoli or stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's true. So you found then that the plant-based diet worked well for you?
Plant-based diet was fantastic for me. I haven't even looked back since, and I'm talking 5 years, maybe more now, that I've taken on that lifestyle. I suppose going back to your question about the nutritional protocol that was needed for Ross, or for any race, indeed, you obviously need to get your carbohydrates in, because that's where your body gets the majority of its fuel from. It'll get it from other sources such as protein and fat, but the best bang for its buck is through carbohydrates. But gone is the day where we have to carb load. It's gone away from that idea of thinking that you need to be eating bowls and bowls of pasta before a race. It's just the body itself, it can't digest that level of carbohydrate, so it takes, it needs a lot of blood to digest the carbohydrates, or to break down the carbohydrate in the liver. So a lot of the carbohydrates, if you have been loading, it takes a lot of blood away from the system. So used to find that your legs would be dead the next day if you were racing. So you need carbohydrates, but you need something light. So I used to use what was called a tactical periodization, or a carb cycling. So the furthest day away from the race, I'd be eating very little carbohydrates, more protein, some fats. I'd have enough carbohydrates to sustain the body. Like, your body needs a certain level of carbohydrates to sustain for living, like even to keep the brain active. Closer to the race, then I'd start up on the carbohydrates. So it was like a periodization, or a pyramid model. The day before, then I'd have more carbohydrates than I'd normally have, but it'd be easily digestible carbohydrates. Like, it wouldn't be the pasta. It may be basmati rice, something light, something easy to digest. The next day, then start normal day, porridge in the morning. You know, that's the cyclist diet: porridge in the morning of the race.
The old banana stuck in
the banana, a bit of yogurt, some nuts as well. Even for the process itself to happen, carbohydrates to be broken down, like, you need protein and you need fats for the body to actually go through that process. So you need to be touching all.
Yeah.
So normal enough, early light breakfast, topping up with a few carbohydrates during the day, some banana, an hour, maybe an hour and a half before a race. Now, a lot of people have this perception that you have a banana during the race. At a hard race, that banana needs to be digested. You know, I used to anyone that's looking for guidance now from me, I'd always say an hour and a half before, because I used to say, I through reading, through research on my own experience, or my own knowledge building path, I discovered that they say that, you know, you need an hour and a half from when the banana hits your lips to when the banana is actually in your muscles, ready to go. So yeah, it's all about timing as well.
Yeah. Water
then in particular is very important. Water and electrolytes, because your body needs electrolytes as well to for that process to break down the carbohydrates.
And one thing as well, as you probably have gotten as well, since you're on a plant-based diet, is this notion of, or people assume, but where do you get your protein from? Which is it's understandable if you think meat has the only protein, or people have this assumption that meat is the only way to get protein, but it's actually not. But you've probably come across that a few times when you explain.
I have in the couple of years that when I was cycling and racing, I suppose, not so much in the last while now. I haven't. People haven't been asking me. I suppose probably because I'm still standing here. It's obvious.
They don't need to question
it's obvious that I'm getting it from someplace. When I was racing, obviously you're going through an awful lot of components. You know, you're going through the various macronutrients. You're going through your proteins, your carbohydrates. So it's something that I used to have to keep on top of. It was something that I'd have to get various different like the proteins are broken down into amino acids. There's certain legumes, certain nuts, certain, even like vegetables themselves, certain vegetables, everything has a certain percentage of protein in it.
Sure.
Oats, you know, they have a percentage of protein, yogurt, various soya products. I try and get a mixture, because say a legume wouldn't be able to provide all the amino acids that your body needs. So I try and get a range of proteins from different sources. Now, you didn't have to get it all in one meal, you know. Because the system has a way of to store a reserve of that protein or amino acid. So it's just a case of topping it up every time. So yeah, I used to try and get a range of protein in, but I seem to be getting enough protein in now. I haven't been failing the last while. It's been weight I've been putting on, so I don't know.
So fast forward and then that was the same year, but in 2018 then a big event occurred.
An unwelcome event.
So tell us about it.
2018, after probably the best achievement of my life, one of the main goals. Well, I suppose it wasn't a goal until later on in life, I suppose. Finished the Ross, felt great, took a week off. I think I took 2 weeks off, started getting back into it again, started doing a bit of training, was relishing the amount of training gain, I suppose, you get from a race like that. Once you should I say, you're prescribed a dose or an ailment such as the Ross, like it is an impact on the system, and the immune system has to deal with it. So there's an impact there on the body. How it deals with it has to grow back stronger. So I was relishing this opportunity of how fit I was going to get. Once the fatigue went, I was going to be flying it. I had the goal of the nationals coming up in June, and I went back. I was back out on the bike. I was dealing with a calf injury at the time that I had brought with me through the Ross, and I just cycled with a mate of mine on the Sunday, and then on the Sunday afternoon, I decided I'd go for a walk with the dog, and just for recovery, just to do something different than cycling, because I'd like to break it up every now and again, just to rather than being in that one plane of motion the whole time, do something different. So I brought the dog and I brought the young one for a walk, and little did I know that the dog himself, he must have picked up a little passenger. And at the time I had a van that I was using for racing, and there was 3 seats in the front, and the young one was on the passenger seat and the dog was in the middle. I don't know what you'd call it. It was like, we were probably like the hillbillies. But I didn't realise that the dog must have picked up a tick. And not until the next day that I found a tick on just underneath my wrist, or underneath the watch on my wrist. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was like a pimple that had bled, and it was a scab. So I went to try and take it off, and then I just thought it was, I realised it was a small little tick, and I said, geez, I better pull that off. I thought he was trying to bite, so I just pulled him off with the tweezers, and I didn't realise he was embedded, and he broke. And I tried my best to suck it out, or to get it pulled out, and there was a small black remnant in there, and so I kind of passed it off. I kind of says, that'll be all right, I'll keep an eye on that. And I was racing and training at the time, and as well, and I suppose the impact of the body was the immune system was still low from the Ross, and my energy levels started to go downhill, and my interest started waning in the cycling. And at the time as well, we had a holiday booked in Spain, so I went out and I had the bike brought out with me as well, and I had planned for 2 weeks of training plan, and in preparation for the Ross, or getting back to the nationals. And things just went downhill rapidly. The interest, I had an emptiness inside me. I had no interest. I recall sitting at the edge of the pool, and the young one was looking for me to go in playing with her in the pool, and I just was staring into the pool. And a few times I recall, thinking, what have happened now if I just went in here head over heels and didn't bother swimming?
If that affected you that much.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't know what was wrong with me. The energy levels, and I still hadn't put it back. I still hadn't associated it with the tick. And I came back from Spain, and the nationals had been on, and I was in touch with the coach that I was working with, and he says, maybe you should just give it another couple of weeks break and just forget about the nationals. And the nationals was down in Sligo at the time. So I went down there, and I was watching that, and I was met up with a few of the lads, and the interest just wasn't there. And I said, I better do something about this. And of course, me being plant-based and vegan, whatever you want to associate it with, people always say, oh, how's your vitamin B12 levels, or how's your iron levels? So I kind of started to believe that myself, that maybe I'm fatigued, maybe my immune system is low, and I'm overtrained, I need to go and I need to get a test done. So I organised for blood counts to be done with the doctor here in Boyle. So that was the week after the Nationals was on the Sunday, and I think it was the 26th of June. The Nationals were on in Sligo, and the week after that I went down and went over to Boyle, got the bloods done, and full blood count, and the doctor was saying, yeah, we'll test you for iron, for B12 and numerous different markers. And I never associated with the tick until we were just there talking, and he was telling me, I think you're just overtrained. He says, you're fatigued, you just need a break. And I said to him, oh, by the way, I says, I got bit with a tick. Could it be Lyme? And he said, probably not. He says, I think you're doing a lot of training, you're fatigued, he says, and you've overcome the Ross. He says, sure, we'll test for you anyways and we'll see. So took the test for the Lyme and went about my business and went back to work, and still in the same state I was, cloudiness in my head, foggy, brain fog. And 2 weeks later, got a phone call, missed call from the doctor, and I seen the number, I knew what the number was, but I had a funny feeling what the answer was going to be. And of course, the doctor says, yeah, you're after testing positive for Lyme disease. Were you abroad? Were you anywhere that was dear? Were you over in America? No. I says, every answer I had was no. So he's organised for me to come in, have an appointment, and went in and got prescription for doxycycline, the drug to give you, or the antibiotics to give you to treat it. And went home, taken 2 or 3 weeks of antibiotics, and there was no improvement. Got worse. So I was on to the doctor again, and he said, I'll increase your dosage, or I'll give you an additional amount of an additional prescription. So I was 6 weeks on doxycycline, I think, and there was still no improvement. It was just going downhill rapidly. Interest was gone completely for cycling, and everything was, I had no interest in doing anything, just more or less reclusive in the house. No energy, depressed, and had gone from the peak of a cliff, the best condition in my life, finished probably the best race, or the best achievement I've ever done anyways, and then straight away off a cliff into the sea and getting battered up against the rocks, you could say.
Yeah.
So
how long then, Joe, were you in that kind of in between feeling like that and then getting to some form of, well, I'm now on the way up again? What was the kind of transition in between those two periods?
So the doctor in Boyle here, he had no real experience. I suppose you couldn't expect him. He wasn't versed in Lyme disease. So he recommended that I'd go for an appointment with an ID doctor in Dublin, the Mater. So went to him, was put on a cocktail of different antibiotics, vitamins, minerals to try and build the immune system back up. When I was on antibiotics every day, I was also taking prebiotics to try and undo the damage that the antibiotics was doing to the stomach. Like the day ever evolved around timings of taking tablets and taking various different nutritional products. Like the expense of it was really starting to feel, it was having its toll on me. In all, to when I started feeling positive was, I suppose, 6 months on antibiotics.
Before you kind of came around?
6 months on antibiotics. Well, it wasn't that I came around because of the antibiotics. I was recommended I had through research, as I said already, everything that I ever did was I'd discover something, I'd become obsessed with it, I'd have to find out more about it, and I'd read and I'd look, I'd research. And I got in touch with a group called TikTok Ireland, and there was a couple of representatives or group members were also in Sligo. So I'd started hearing good things about biomagnetics, and so eventually I said, I'm going to do it. I'll make an appointment for myself and I'll see. it can't do any harm, and so it can only be a benefit. So I got an appointment with a lady up in Rossnowla to do a biomagnetics session, and went up. It was a cold evening in November. I remember waiting in Rossnowla, the side of the beach, or she had a venue up there, and went in, and it was kind of like a therapy session, really. She was listening. She knew my symptoms. She knew the case. She had experienced it herself, and we did the biomagnetics, and I felt great. I felt somewhat better than I was, I should say. I shouldn't say I felt great.
Was that you felt better on the way out than you were on the way in?
I felt better on the way out than I had in the couple of weeks or couple of months prior to that. I would say, even looking back on it now, I would say it kind of gave me a positivity maybe that the body needed to start healing itself. Some people could argue that it was all the antibiotics, but I think I needed that positivity to allow my body to start healing.
Like a charge positivity.
Yes,
kind of,
to allow maybe even to allow the antibiotics to start working. Maybe my system was resisting it, but from that day, and I had subsequent appointments with her after that, and every appointment I had, I felt so much better. And every appointment I went to the Mater Hospital to meet the consultant, and he did blood tests. Like, they have various blood markers that they can test to see how your immune system is working. He recognised an improvement, and the lad, I still didn't say anything about the biomagnetics to him until the last session, when he said to me, he says, I think we can start taking you off the antibiotics. I'd like to try you without them and see how you're getting on with just the herbal remedies, the LDN, the vitamins, the minerals, the various different other minerals he was giving me. And I said to him, I've been also going to the biomagnetic therapy. And he says, I don't know about it myself, he says, but he says, whatever you feel works, he says. And I have heard people say that they've got great things from it. And I've got great reports for it. Like, I have recommended numerous people to go to her since that. But I always kind of chalk it down to that was the time when the body started to heal.
Yeah.
It started to fight. I think it just gave it the immune system that little edge.
Yeah.
To
kickstart it again.
To start taking control of the Lyme.
Yeah.
Like, even to this day, and I've tried to do a bit of research on it in terms of Lyme and in the system. Like, do you ever get rid of it, or do you still have it in the system? I think you do. I think it's a case that your immune system gets to a certain level that it's able to control it. But I'd be kind of wary of immune system taking a knock again, that it allowed to get a foothold.
Probably if your immune system became weakened somewhat, Joe, that it mightn't allow it, that it might resurface or allow the Lyme, because as far as I know, it's not a curable disease, if you like, at the moment, but it's also a very rare disease, because I was reading up in 2019 there was only 1,000 reported cases or confirmed cases of Lyme in Ireland, which is, you don't associate Lyme disease in Ireland. Well, I didn't anyway. It was always something you were told you get that abroad. So
and everybody associated with, have you been travelling to America? That's the first question you get asked, is, have you been in America? I know through my association with TikTok Ireland and various different groups, I know of people that have contracted Lyme in the 70s in Ireland. So I know there's confirmed cases there, reportable cases. They were ones like me that they were lucky enough to get a positive test. The protocol in Ireland for testing for Lyme is, you can get tested if you think you get bit. If you go to a Lyme literate doctor, they'll test you. A lot of people associate they'll only recommend testing if you can see the rash. We're all here of this bullseye rash, or what they call, I think it's erythema migrans is the name of the rash that it develops. But I didn't develop a rash. And subsequent to me getting it then, and my research, there's only something like 35% of people that contract it develop a rash. And if you go to a Lyme literate doctor and they provide, or they recommend that you get tested, it's the whole testing protocol that probably, it's not the first test that you get tested with is called the ELISA. It's an enzyme test, or it's a test that it tries to locate an antibody that your body is producing to combat the Lyme. And if your antibody isn't, or if your immune system isn't producing that antibody, the test won't pick it up. There's the second protocol is what's called the Western blot. It's more sensitive to the Lyme. It tests a different enzyme or a different part or protein of the antibody. That's more sensitive, but it takes 2 weeks to do. And it's commonly, I think it's normally, at the time, it was sent to the UK. Whether it's a more expensive test or not, but there's a window there that you can fall between that you won't get a positive test, which is unfortunate. So you have a number of patients or people that might have contracted Lyme disease from a tick that have been told they're not positive.
Right.
But
they're not producing the antibody.
They're not producing the antibody.
At the time of the test.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough at the time when I was racing that I knew I was so in tune. My system, everything was monitored. Heart rate monitored, power. I knew I wasn't producing the same amount of power. I knew there was something wrong with my lungs. I knew I knew what my lung capacity was like. I knew there was something wrong. But a lot of people may not associate it with anything that's wrong, because the first thing you feel is you feel like you have a cold or a flu. It goes away for a while. You start getting aches and pains and joints that you can't associate it with anything. You start getting spasms, muscle spasms, brain fog. There's a numerous different. What they usually call it is the great pretender. Like it replicates other illnesses that people can't associate with Lyme. And if you get your negative test and you're not going on to Western blot, which is the next protocol for testing in Ireland and the UK, you're kind of, well, the test is telling you you're negative, so you're off, you're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just in your head. And even people telling you it's just in your head is enough. After a while, after enough times you hear it, you start to say, maybe it is just in my head. Maybe that ache in my knee is just kind of something
phantom pain.
Phantom pain, exactly. Yeah. It's the spasms in the bed, and trying to get to sleep and your skin crawling. And I remember when my worst symptoms, I suppose, I had it felt like it was running down the nervous system through my spine. It was like it was attacking my spinal cord. I could feel a pain in the neck. I never felt that kind of cramps, spasms in the throat, down through the rib cage, down through the spine before. Waking up in the middle of the night all of a sudden with your two legs cramping. Not training at the time either, so I couldn't associate it with any, training fatigue. So, it's...
And so how are you then today, as of now? What, have you any symptoms? Have you any kind of associated pain or anything from that?
Not that I can no pains as such. Now I have to keep an eye on myself that I don't get fatigued or get overworked, overstressed. I find stress in particular kind of takes its toll on the system. Training, I have an awful habit, as I said before, like going in 100%, go back go to the gym, go cycling, do a bit of running. Then all of a sudden I'm a couple of days on the trot. I'm doing too much. So I would, if I was to describe what I'm like now, I'm 3 weeks feeling good, 1 week where I feel crap. It's kind of where I have to take that. I know now. Once it comes, I just have to write it out. rest, take the rest that the body requires.
Exactly.
And you know that you're going to have a couple of days, back at it again in a couple of days. You feel down in the dumps, like you feel a bit depressed, but
it's par for the course, I suppose, considering you have Lyme's. That's just probably one of the things you have to learn to live with.
Yeah.
But so the compulsion comes back in now in a different avenue in the form of photography, which is a shared interest we both have.
Yeah, shared interest.
And
that's how we kind of back in touch with each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I saw you were posting on Instagram a couple of photos, and I was like I was away traveling at the time, and it says, let's meet up now with Joe. And so we went out a few times. And so how did you get involved in photography? Because it's only a recent thing, isn't it? A couple of years maybe.
It's a recent thing where my obsession has taken over. So I bought a camera years back. I think it was when myself and Colette started going on holidays first. And, you go through this wanting to document the holidays. You want to document family events, various weddings, things like that. And I bought a mediocre software to process the photos. And I was getting nowhere. I didn't know what I was doing. Photographs weren't coming out the way I wanted it, so the camera was left into the corner of the cupboard, never to be seen again. But then drones, I suppose, started hitting the market and started giving me a bit of intrigue, and of course Instagram, of course, as well, and looking at the Irish countryside and how great it looks through the eyes of a drone. And of course I was back cycling as well, and through my cycles, like cycling is great because you're up about 2 foot higher than somebody in a car, and you're cycling along the roads, and there was roads I'd be going along with a car, and you wouldn't see much other than the hedges, and then there was other places I was going by on the bike, and there was, there was houses, old cottages and hidden in fields, and there was old cars, old Morris Minors and stuff like that hidden under hedges that I could see with on the bike. And I thought, then it started getting, giving me a bit of enthusiasm, or I'd see a forest or I'd see a hill or a valley, and I'd be thinking, geez, I'd love to see what's over that valley now, or I'd love to see what's in the top of that hill. So of course I was talking to Colette, and I suppose I was dropping hints, maybe you could say, that I'd love a drone. I'd love to see what it's like up there. So, of course, 2020, the unspoken one arrived.
Yes.
And I had a birthday coming up, so Colette had arranged to get me a drone for my birthday. So I thought this was great, and I was going to get great action out of it. And so set off out in the car, and I was up Schlieve Éireann in Leitrim, and I was looking here, there, and everywhere with the drone. And I said at the time I was going to put a bit of effort into it this time. I wasn't going to mess around like I was the last time. I was going to learn a bit. I was going to start doing editing, get a good editing package, and I suppose you can't look much further than Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. And I said I was going to invest in that as well, and I was going to learn this, and I was going to make sure. But the camera, or the drone itself, it led on back to the DSLR. So I was looking through the cupboards for that to see, could I get it charged up and see, does it still work? Because I found the drone imagery in particular, it was very one-dimensional. It was particularly up around Leitrim there in Schlieve Éireann. There was an awful lot of forestry. And I was getting fed up with looking at the same trees, the same colours, the same textures. So I started getting back into the DLSR. So I started to learn about that. Started to learn about the I can't think of the name of it now, the triangle of...
the
exposure triangle,
triangle, yeah.
And came across some online courses. Of course, got obsessed
with that.
Head for leather, watching every video that was. And of course, when you were nearly finished one, there was another video. So became steadily obsessed with that. And then, of course, it's a case of the lens now isn't great on this, and the megapixels aren't great on the camera. So I decided to buy a better camera and bought a few lenses. Still learning the way. And I was interested in the learning as well, and how, even when I always look back, when I started Photoshop first, when I started Photoshop first, I could not, like, I was looking at videos and I did not know what I was looking at. There was so much in it, and it was so hard to figure out what I wanted to do. And then it was so hard to figure out what icons did what. But I persisted, and I started to, eventually I started to learn. I started to remember the keyboard shortcuts. I remembered what was the certain icons meant. And I started getting more into composure of what compositions was, look good. And from there, I got better, and
Yeah. It's an ongoing
and loved
process,
it.
yeah.
Loved it.
And what would be your favourite genre of photography?
Well, I would have said landscape, but then I was always the big vistas, and I kind of got bored with that as well. And then I started using the telescopic lens to try and home in on more of a smaller feature in the landscape. But that a certain thing that, using the compression of the lens as well, that people wouldn't associate with the same picture. They might see what the eye sees, but they don't associate the compression of the lens. But my genre, I would say I don't have, landscape, majority of it is landscape, but I suppose you yourself have put me wise to street photography.
With the Finding, I give you that recommendation for the documentary Finding Vivian Maier, which is
fantastic,
an unbelievable documentary. Yeah. But street photography,
fine art. I'm kind of into that now as well. Various genres, which maybe can be my downfall too. That you associate certain photographers with certain styles.
Niches, they do,
and they can develop that style. Where I'm kind of bit of this, bit of that, bit of the other.
Yeah.
I suppose there's nothing wrong with that either. I'll eventually find my niche.
Absolutely. Well, I mean,
I go down.
I've been doing it since 2007, and I would say documentary / street photography with a bit of street portraits is in there. But I still like landscape. One thing I really haven't done is wildlife. But, that's something, again, I don't like to pigeonhole either at this stage, because I don't need to. If you're interested in doing wildlife today, landscape tomorrow, portraits the next day, that's the way it should be.
Yeah, wildlife is a different...
It is.
It's a lot of waiting around and in a hide and a camouflage suit on you. And
I'd love to try macro someday.
Macro will be good.
I'd love to try
Opens
macro.
up a new world right under your nose. Really.
I'd love to try that. I haven't tried it, but it's on the list.
Now, Clet has a lot of flowers around the house, and every July to August, I do go around doing a small bit of... I haven't got a macro lens now, but I'll try and do a small bit to try and, I suppose, highlight the beauty of these flowers and try and get in and the intricacies of them. And of course, then you have the bees, and there's lovely lavenders out in the back of our yard, and it's full of bumblebees, trying to get them in all their glory.
So, what does the future hold for Joe going forward? Any goals, ambitions? How would you like with cycling, photography, the different elements?
Get back into cycling a bit more. I'm not doing enough of it now these days. I have a lot on with football and coaching kids in Leitrim Gales, back coaching a bit of football. I'm back 5 years now at this stage, and trying to get back into a bit more cycling. I'd love to just balance everything. I found cycling, it gave me a lifestyle that I never had before. It made me confident. It made me more positive about my own body image. As I said, more confident. There would have been things before cycling that I would never have done. Do you know? Even say, for instance, you asking me to come over and do this podcast, years ago, I wouldn't have done anything like that. But the positivity, the confidence that cycling gave me, that now I take on going forward. And, I want to try new things. I want to understand different views, different opinions. Like, that's the one thing, I suppose, the one positive I take out of the Lyme is that now I'm more tolerant of people, I find. I'm more open to opinion, and I'll also try and educate myself more.
Yeah, which is important because, I think people that aren't open to different opinions, maybe like you probably said you might have been, you can be closed off to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't always have to agree with them, because that's the way it should be. You shouldn't agree with everything. So it's nice to be able to form your own opinions. And as you've obviously done in all your different endeavours, you've done the research, you've gone hell for leather, as we said, and and that's your personality. So it's all about adapting, and you seem to have done that. So it's great to me, to have come through an awful time like that with Lyme, to kind of be down in the dumps over everything, and to come back, and then to find a new passion with the photography, but also you want to rekindle the bike again. And one thing that I did want to mention, and I will put this in the post that goes along with this episode, is you wrote a very powerful Facebook post that in 2018 in September of that year, talking about how you lost your best friend, and that was an analogy for your bike.
My bike, yeah.
So, and I will put that in because it's a great post, and it actually got picked up by a paper, didn't it?
Yeah, it was recommended, or I met through the Lyme groups again. I met with a lady down in, she actually recommended me to go doing the biomagnetics in Donegal too. Fiona Quilter, she pushed me, give me a push to submit the piece to Sligo Champion for the notes. I believe it was the notes, but they took it on. I think she had connections in there in Sligo Champion, because they had done a number of pieces or a number of adverts for Lyme awareness for Fiona as well. And I just didn't think of anything of it. I assumed it was going to be edited within an inch of its life, and I was okay with that. I said to her, you can edit it as best you see. So she came back to me, she says, Joe, I don't need to do any editing on this. I'm happy to go over how it is. So, it went into the paper to try and to bring awareness, I suppose, to, because there are a number of people in Sligo as well that have suffered with Lyme in the past too. I suppose to use me as a kind of I wouldn't say a poster boy as such, but a person of my kind of sporting
background
that it can happen to anybody. Yeah. Like, it doesn't have to be your hiker or your farmer or somebody out fishing, or just it can happen to anyone.
Yeah, anyone. And before we wrap it up, Joe, is there anything you'd like to touch on that we already haven't?
There's numerous things, Carol, I think. How long have we got?
Fire ahead.
Nothing in particular.
Yeah.
We didn't touch on my new love, my new obsession.
Which is
the mythology.
Oh, the mythology. Yes. Yes. Talk about that, Joe, yeah. Because that does tie in as well with...
It does. It ties in with my photography.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I was looking for a line or an angle to go on, and I suppose I'll tell you how I got into mythology in the first place. I think I was driving to work one day, and I was listening to Dave Fanning, and I don't normally listen to Dave Fanning on 2FM, but he was interviewing Mangan, who was just bringing out his new book, 32 Words for a Field. And he was telling the story about the various different, and I couldn't believe this, there was 32 different words in Irish, in Old Irish, to describe a field, various different fields. The stony field, the rocky field, whatever other type of field is. But he had a way about him, and the passion he had for Irish was fantastic. And I'd always kind of feel a bit sorry that myself that I didn't pay enough heed to Irish in the past when I was in school. And I said, I'm going to buy this book, read up on it, and see what it has. And maybe it might educate me a bit more, as well, and try and kickstart a bit of an interest in the Irish language. So I was reading it anyways, and I came across a piece on it about the Tuatha De Danann. And now I'd heard of the Tuatha De Danann a few times before, wouldn't have associated with much. But the story he had was that the Tuatha De Danann landed on the Iron Mountain or Sliabh Éireann in Leitrim when they were invading Ireland thousands of years ago, and they burned they arrived in a cloud of smoke and flames and lightning, and landed on the island, or landed on the mountain, and departed, and burnt their boats so they couldn't return home or return where they came. And I was intrigued with this. I didn't know that Sliabh Éireann was associated with this old Irish Celtic mythology. So that led me on to listening to his podcasts. From that, then, of course, I started to get a bit obsessed, and I said I better start finding out more. Is there more mythology associated with Ireland, or with Leitrim, with Sligo, with Boyle, with Roscommon? And of course, we all know about Knocknarea and Queen Maeve and all that. So I started to delve a little bit deeper, and I started to find out there's an awful lot associated with Connacht in particular, and started to read and get to listen to more podcasts. Got hooked on a podcast called Candlelit Tales, binged hundreds of podcasts, because I had only found them late in life, and they had 2 or 3 years ahead of me, so I spent a couple of months binging them. Of course, that led on to something else and something else. And I developed an interest in mythology. It also gave me a line for my photography, because it was a story I could establish with
a location,
the landscape, the location, the various different, and it was all achievable. It was in the locality. It was something that I could travel short distances to. Yeah. I could go down to Knocknarea, I could go to Carrowkeel, up to Cruachanai in Rathcroghan, Sliabh Éireann, discovering, and through my work as well at Leitrim County Council, I would have worked with a lot of old maps, old OSI maps, and I could see on them that there was old houses, old cottages that were long since forgotten, disappeared in the middle of forestry, in the middle, under hedges. And I set about trying to discover these. And the drone came in handy as well when it could. And I was always looking for this, hidden gem, something that nobody knew was there, and trying to bring the story across to people, that people would look at it and say, my God, I didn't know that was there.
Well, that's true, because I think there's definitely a little angle there, because like yourself, I love trying to incorporate a story with a photo, because I think it just makes it more dynamic and interesting. We all love stories, but I haven't seen that angle done much. So, that, and you have the obvious interest in the mythology of the local area. So you could definitely combine your mythology knowledge and interest and research capabilities and try and get a photo of a certain area or landscape that has meaning. And I know you're doing that in a couple of your last posts as well on Instagram. And I think it's a very, again, I love a kind of an educational side to photography as well. If you can learn something about a photo, whether it's a story, a background or something. So it's definitely good. Yeah,
like not everybody is into reading or researching. People, they may sit across from me and they might listen in a pub to, now I don't drink anymore, but I do socialise. They might listen to me tell a story about the Tuatha De Danann or Queen Maeve or something like that. But they'll only listen for so long. But if you can emulate that, or you can exemplify that in a photograph and have a little story with it.
Exactly.
It, as they say, a picture paints 1,000 words. People are going to be interested in it, because everybody's attracted, I suppose, to Instagram nowadays, and the colours so if you can get something, a landscape, a battle site, a megalithic tomb, something like that, with a sunset or a glorious looking sky above it, and have some sort of a story with it, it gives some sort of meaning, or it gives a bit of depth to it that people can associate with. And you'd be surprised the amount of people that know very little about the mythology of Ireland, even the stories around the locality here. Boyle,
I'd say it's very high. I definitely, I myself don't know much at all about that. Again, it's something that I think we should know more of, and it's probably because it's not pushed in our face.
It's not pushed in our face. And even when you look back to how were we taught, even in mine, your time now, I think Irish has changed since. Mine and your time, what's the first thing you do when you went to first year in Irish class? Grammar. Like, who's going to associate with a language with grammar first? You need to live it. You need to be immersed in it in some way. Why not, at that time, we should have been told the stories. We should have been told the stories of the Táin Bó Cúailnge. We should have been told the story of even the Cot Mai Tira, only down the road in Highwood, the Battle of Mai Tira. The stories of Cuchulainn, the Red Branch, the Nafinia. Like a story to highlight Irish. Like me and you, we would have been interested in, as I mentioned before, the Gladiators, MacGyver. If we had a story to go with, we would have been caught.
Course,
we would have bought into it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we had no real incentive at a young age. There was nothing to hook us.
No hook. Yeah. But it's changing. I know, I see that changing, and I see the way mythology it's become more mainstream. Definitely, there's more people interested in it. Even you look at the fire festival, the Baltana Fire Festival in Uisneach, every year it's getting bigger and bigger. Like this year, I think there was 10,000 at it in May. The year before, I think it was probably 8,000-9,000. Like it's getting more known. It's getting bigger. I think the one thing I would say about the one thing that came out of the pandemic, I hate saying it, the name itself, but was that people kind of had a reset, and you see more people are out in the wilds. They're out hiking, they're out walking, they're getting back to nature. They want to get back to a sense of belonging. They need something
because it was taken away from them for a couple of years. That's why
they need something, but they need something to associate with. They need something to identify, and our identity is our Gaelic heritage. So that's why I find people are getting back into the mythology.
Yeah, and as said, that freedom and that they weren't able to during them couple of years to do any of that within a certain radius, obviously. But as you said, now they're getting back, and it's good to see. It's good to see people trying to get a connection back to their roots. But well, I think that about covers what we wanted to cover, Joe. Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate taking the time.
Thanks for inviting me again.
Not a problem. And that was fascinating stuff. Thank you.
I'd just like to say what you're doing here is fantastic as well. Giving a voice to people in Boyle. I know I'm gone out of Boyle a couple of years, but I still like to say anyone ever asks me, even when I'm gone 18, 19 years or whatever, I'll always say I'm from Boyle originally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even I find my association with Leitrim now, with Sligo. I have great affinity with Sligo and Roscommon. I'm truly a Roscommon man.
Oh yeah, Boyle through and through.
But like even the podcasts you've had up to date have been fantastic. Like there's been some great talks. Like I'd hope that I have come across and that I can also add to that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, again, the core kind of principle of doing this, as we've said, is, to document people's stories. Lives.
And as you said, everybody has a story.
Everyone has a story. It doesn't matter how small. Not everyone has limes. Not everyone has,
Not everybody has an interest in mythology. Oh, there's more around.
Absolutely. But I think, it's important because 10, 15 years down the line, it's always good to have these stories documented. And I just wish we started doing them sooner. But as the Chinese proverb used to say, isn't it, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now.
Exactly. So, I've heard that before too.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks very much, Joe.
Thank you, Carla.